Thank you.
That's too parochial, but, oh, I'm sorry.
We have to rise to the
Well,
occasion.
Challenge.
I've spent the last 10 years on the ACT board with Dick Riley, and I had to leave the board, but I'm still learning from him. He's been a tremendous mentor and a great Secretary of Education who early on recognized what we were trying to do in Long Beach.
Yeah, no, and you guys have been just exemplary too, so it's exciting that you're there. I was just wondering, Dr. Cohn, if you could comment on how what you're going to do might fit in with the presentation we just had from CORE. It sounds
Sure.
like many of the
Yes.
same principles.
Yes, CORE is doing outstanding work with the large urbans, and we intend to learn from them. One of the things I take very seriously is the charge not to create a new bureaucracy or replicate an existing one. So whenever we have something that's already up, whether it's a qualitative analysis, something that we can partner and plug in with, we intend to do that. So I see CORE as definitely partners in complementing what we'll be doing.
Senator Monning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add my thanks as well for this commitment. I alluded to our visit to Cabrillo High School earlier, and I mentioned one of the specific programs that impressed us of just the peer work together, but some of the other strengths were the links built with the City College and Kent State, and for the high school students to have that early connection where it wasn't a theoretical place out there that maybe isn't attainable to them, but part of the curriculum was integrated with bringing in faculty from the City College and CSU and students having access. That was most impressive. But what is hard to quantify is what you all created there. The spirit we felt on that campus that had a history, as you well know, of high dropout rate, violence, racial conflict, et cetera. They didn't turn this button on for our visit. There's no way you could have created that for some VIPs coming on the campus. It was contagious. It just a turnaround of enthusiasm for the place and for the mission. And boy, if we could bottle that and convey it. So congratulations on your hand in that. And again, I think some of our efforts to measure based on test scores, those are obviously important indicators, but there's this more intangible that is infecting students with the excitement of learning in an environment where they feel supported and that they are indeed the focus of the place they go to every day. So
I think there's been a willingness in Long Beach to sort of ignore political correctness and try things that, and the male-female academies that you're referencing is a part of that. You know, especially with regard to vulnerable young males, what can we do to build some of those skills that are so necessary for survival?
Right, and that just seemed to be the platform. Those, what they gained from that kind of peer support and opening up with peers, that was the on-ramp to being able to be successful everywhere else.
Right.
And nobody had ever created that opportunity for them. I think, Ms. Burr, you also referenced Superintendent Michael Watkins being a member of your team. I have the honor of representing Santa Cruz and am well aware of his achievements on so many levels, but particularly his commitment over the years to at-risk youth and trying to adapt our educational system so that there's different on-ramps based on different backgrounds. So we look forward to your continued success and appreciate your willingness to sign up for another round here.
More round.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank
Senator
you.
Lou, if I could just, on behalf of the collaborative, would also like to express our appreciation to you and to the Senate leader for your attention to the collaborative and interest in capacity building, which Dr. Cohn talked about so eloquently, that this is a seismic shift, as I've said, in not only our funding system, but our accountability system. And our LEAs need help in understanding how to make that work. And we've got a lot of years of compliance mentality that we need to help them with. So I just wanted to express our appreciation.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay. Our final panel today consists of a school district, a county office of education that is participating in what we call the user acceptance testing of the evaluation rubrics. We will learn about their experiences in using the rubrics. This panel will also include a representative of the advocacy community who will describe the work of several advocacy groups regarding the development of the evaluation rubrics. So welcome. We have Deborah Bucco, the Assistant Superintendent of Ceres Unified School District, Nancy Sedgwick, Director of Local Control and Accountability Plan for San Diego County Office of Education, Wendell Callahan, Director of Juvenile Court and Community Schools in San Diego County Office of Education, and Liz Gillian, Director of Legislative and Community Affairs for Public Advocates. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a mouthful. So, Ms. Bucco, we'll start with you.
Turn that on?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting Ceres Unified to provide a local perspective on today's important topics. This is a time of incredible hope and possibility, reflection, and careful decision-making so we can learn from past experiences and move bravely into a new system of accountability for California educators, and most importantly, the students and the families that we serve. Our experiences under No Child Left Behind and educational research have taught us valuable lessons. We know from the work of Dr. Anthony Mohammed that in high-achieving schools, internal and external obstacles are often viewed as challenges and opportunities for growth. To do what is perceived as impossible, they recognize that students are not at risk, but school-dependent. With the right guidance, resources, and time, all students can become academically and socially successful. We know from the extensive work of Dr. Pedro Noguera that critical characteristics of high-achieving schools include a focus on equity and achievement, a focus on teaching and learning through a coherent instructional system, an equity-focused learning environment with high expectations, and an intellectual, social, physical, and emotional supports for all students, and a welcoming environment which creates strong parent, community, school ties in support of multiple forms of student success. Knowing these realities, what do California schools need? We need accountability with a focus on mediation of policy within a local context rather than strict fidelity to a one-size-fits-all punitive system. We need a focus on research-based practices rather than prescribed programs. And we must have a system that ensures we do more than talk about closing the expectation and achievement gaps. We need accountability that supports the work of educators to serve students and families with a goal of equity, responsibility, and advocacy for all students. Because of the leadership of the legislature and State Board of Education, much has already been done in California to provide a foundation for this work. One of many examples is Senate Bill 359, the California Mathematics Placement Act of 2015. This legislation holds districts accountable for addressing inequitable practices which create barriers to mathematics classes for a disproportionate number of students. It's a clear example that accountability can be measured in multiple ways and does not have to be limited to a test score as an academic measure. We've also begun this work through the LCFF legislation. As a result, stakeholders have been provided a genuine voice in school decision-making, and the supplemental and concentration grant funding, in particular, is changing the lives of children and families. The key is we must really listen to and consider what our stakeholders are saying. Recently, I had the pleasure of spending a day with students from our secondary schools. One of the best parts of my job is facilitating the LCAP and the stakeholder engagement process. At the end of spending 4 hours with 50 of our secondary students, I asked them, should I do this again? And they all said yes. And I said, okay, I got you out of school and I fed you pizza. Should I do this again? And one young man at the end stood up and he said, I have had things on my chest for 4 years that I've wanted to share. Thank you for listening. We don't often stop to talk to the people that we're charged with serving. Accountability is embedded within the LCAP process itself, separate from the document. Stakeholder input and continual evaluation of progress. The annual update and development of next year's plan takes place throughout the school year, every year. It's become a meaningful part of the work we are doing in Ceres, and I'm appreciative of how this process has led to increased and improved services for our students, families, and staff. Because of the supplemental and concentration grant funding, we've added learning directors to reduce the counselor-to-student ratio. We've created a comprehensive physical, mental health, and social skills support system, which is providing critical resources for school-dependent children. We've expanded art and music to enrich the lives and education of children in elementary schools. We've utilized these funds to ensure every Ceres student visits a college campus once in elementary school, once in junior high, and once in high school, at a minimum. And this year, we've implemented a Wonder-World program providing internet-enabled devices for every K-12 student. Our students must learn the 21st century content and skills to compete with children in more affluent communities, and we are committed to closing the educational and digital divide. Thank you for your work to make that happen. I must also acknowledge, however, that while the LCAP process is instrumental in creating and supporting transparency and authentic engagement with our stakeholders, the LCAP document itself is frustrating and incredibly time-consuming. As an accountability tool, the template creates consistency between districts, but quite frankly, significant hours are taken away from work with students, families, and staff to complete a document that is far too cumbersome and not at all stakeholder-friendly. As a result, we spend additional hours developing executive summaries and presentations to represent the content of the LCAP, which is important, in ways that engage rather than intimidate our stakeholders. My belief is the evaluation rubrics, we've been very honored to be part of reviewing those, that they will aid and enhance our work. We appreciate that the purpose of the rubrics is for districts to evaluate our strengths, weaknesses, and areas that require improvement. To that end, my sincere hope is the final documents will remain tools and resources, sources of reflection and support, rather than evolving into unwieldy compliance documents we must complete and then submit to a county office of education, some of which are adding even more bureaucratic hoops and hurdles in the process. We have found the rubric drafts to be relevant, useful, and applicable. The practice standards in particular provide valuable resources to reinforce and refine services and to develop new services as we move forward. With all this in mind, what does Ceres Unified recommend regarding the accountability system being developed? We recommend an accountability system which genuinely supports equity through multiple measures of both performance and expectation for improvement for all students. Our local context is important, and keeping our focus as closely as possible on the work in the classroom is imperative. An accountability system focused on supporting growth for each and every subgroup is essential. Meeting thresholds is one approach to accountability. However, it's not enough if achievement gaps persist. I ask educators all the time, which students are we willing to ignore? The answer needs to be not one. We recommend increased expectations for closing of performance and achievement gaps for subgroups of students in particular, if we are truly going to address expectation and achievement gaps. There's a danger of complacency when a statewide threshold is set. Some may say, as long as we've met the minimum target, we are fine. We cannot be willing to dismiss the children we are not serving when a minimum threshold is set. We recommend common templates and tools be used as research-based resources for guiding our work. Hold districts accountable without redundancy and time-consuming processes resulting in lengthy documents few outside of school administrators read. Require only those who are not improving to provide this extensive documentation. Use indicators and metrics to identify those not serving all students equitably. Require them to complete and submit reports. Hold them accountable. However, if we are making progress and meeting the needs of our subgroups, please don't take my attention away from teachers and students by requiring me to write more plans, complete more reports, and jump through more compliance hoops that don't reflect our local context. District and school leaders need to be in classrooms, supporting teachers and students in the critical work that they're doing, not in an office writing yet another report. Additionally, we recommend the identification of the 5% of schools with ESSA include all, and not just those schools utilizing Title I funds. Districts learned through NCLB, one way to stay out of the penalty box was just not to provide Title I funds to a particular school. By applying the indicators and metrics to all California schools and districts, there's reduced possibility some of our most school-dependent children will be neglected. Lastly, and very importantly, we recommend accountability for how supplemental and concentration grant dollars are utilized. We talked this morning about budget and how do we be transparent with our fiscal resources. School districts have a base allocation and we have a base job to do. The money that you're providing through LCFF is tied to supplemental and concentration grant dollars. Our LCAPs can be very effective if the money that we're documenting in that LCAP is limited to that supplemental and concentration grant dollars and not necessarily every dollar a school district gets. It allows us to refine that focus. These funds, the supplemental and concentration grant funds, have shifted our thinking about what it truly means to increase and improve services. And that was what I believe the LCAP was originally intended to document. However, we are deeply concerned if districts are not utilizing these supplemental and concentration grant dollars to support children. If they are sweeping these funds back into base funding at the end of the year, student needs are not being met, and that would truly be a travesty. Thank you for providing Ceres an opportunity to be a voice in the development of this critically important process. We're truly honored to serve the students and families in our community. And thank you to the work you're doing, the State Board of Education is doing. There are a lot of very important people working on projects and plans and providing funding to make things happen for kids that I never thought I would see in my career. And the children I get to see in classrooms every day deserve it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nancy Sedgwick, let's hear the county perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here this morning. San Diego County Office of Education has been involved in this rubric development process since the very beginning. We hosted a rubric session last year, and then this year we've been involved in the user acceptance testing. And we found the process to be very productive, and we appreciate the opportunity to involve many voices in this project. We've approached this as a very collaborative process. We've included partners from both our curriculum instruction, learning and leadership services, business programs, student support services, and from our juvenile court and community schools with us as we've gone through the UAT process. We meet together collaboratively before, go over the examples, talk through things, and come up with what we want to talk about when we meet with WestEd. Our feedback to WestEd has included some of the following points. We want to make sure that the rubric is a useful support for local planning and not just a compliance document. We hope that there will be clarity around the intent and purpose for the rubric. We want to make sure that the rubric will support county offices as a way to evaluate district performance relative to the LCFF priorities, along with next steps to take around that improvement. For example, we think that the LCAP rubric could be a tool that our county superintendent uses as he engages in his LCAP after action meetings with every one of the 42 districts in our county. We also hope that it ensures that the needs of the unduplicated students are included in the rubric, and that it keeps the language of the rubric and the accountability process simple and easy to understand for all stakeholders. We feel that the rubrics are evolving, that they are moving along nicely, and we do understand this is difficult work and it will take a lot of time, but we do think that they're on the right track. We are very excited that there is a discussion of alignment between the LCFF rubrics, state accountability, and potentially federal accountability. Our districts have been asking for years to simplify the process, to have one accountability system, one planning process, so that they can focus more on doing the work than writing the plans. We believe that the rubric has potential to move the LCAPs beyond the compliance documents to help districts find the right path to improvement using a performance-based improvement process. We want to be sure the accountability system works for all of the various types of districts in San Diego County, from tiny rural San Pasqual to one of the largest districts in the state, San Diego Unified, to elementary districts, secondary districts, comprehensive districts, unified districts, alternative programs, charters. We want to make sure that it's broad enough and has enough flexibility that everybody can work with it. Our San Diego County districts are pretty much on board in terms of in appreciating the LCFF and LCAP process. They like the local accountability. They are interested in creating lots of opportunities to reflect on their results and the next steps. And the county office is there to support them. We provide numerous support services and resources. I think you have a brochure about our LCAP support services that lists some of the things that we do. We provide workshops on everything from planning stakeholder engagement to writing the LCAPs to best practices for unduplicated students. And we always practice and model a collaborative approach, because one of the benefits of this process has been curriculum and business getting together and talking to each other, sometimes for the very first time. It's always rewarding to see when our efforts come to life, as in the case of Sweetwater District in our county. We worked with them on their stakeholder engagement process, and they ultimately presented regional opportunities for all stakeholders to learn together and share ideas for improvement. Over 1,200 people participated, and they were pretty much equally divided between staff, parents, and students. It was a remarkable event with everybody sharing in a rich, rigorous, thoughtful conversation that resulted in several new actions and services being placed into the LCAP or refinement of services that were already there. We've also seen the growth of LCAP advisory groups across our county, advisory groups that include all stakeholders, including not just like the parent advisory group, but this would be a district-wide oversight kind of committee that would include parents and students and community members and partners, and they're coming together to look at all the data that is coming out of the LCAP needs assessments and talking about how to prioritize that. Every district's doing it a little differently. Not every district's doing it, but we're definitely seeing a growth in the appreciation of the fact that the more people are at the table, the better ideas you get, and the more the solutions will come to mind. And our county office has done, for the first time, a Saturday parent symposium around LCAP, where we brought parent leaders from across the county, from all the different districts that wanted to come, to build their capacity around the LCAP and the LCAP process so they can go back and be leaders and be effectively involved in the LCAP process in their districts with the knowledge of how to ask the questions, what questions to ask, what does the data mean, what are the sorts of things that they can be looking for. We had over 100 people show up to that, mostly parents. I also think you have the program for that and some pictures from that event in your packets. So I'd like to end with the idea that this is a really exciting time. in education in California. I have been involved in education in California for, I won't tell you how many years, but it's over 30. And this is a really powerful time of possibilities. Everything is coming together. It's what we've been asking for and wanting for a very long time. We're poised to have a more relevant and aligned accountability system that allows local communities to determine how to meet the unique needs of their students via local decision-making in their own local context. That's exciting. It may take a little while for people to jump on board because there have been 30 years of compliance and fill-in-the-blank kinds of situations, but people are really starting to believe that this is true and that they have the opportunity to do some innovative and exciting things, and I think that's really exciting. The flexibility and transparency in this new system is allowing people to think outside the box and bring everybody into the discussion. And they're looking at more alternatives to better meet the needs of all of the students, especially those groups of students that are currently experiencing those opportunity gaps that really need our help. So I would like to thank you. I think we're on a positive road. I think these are positive changes, and I hope we keep moving forward because I'm going to hang around for a few more years because I'm really looking forward to seeing how this turns out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Callahan, what about the juvenile court system?
Madam Chair, thank you for inviting me here. I'm happy to be here and talk about that. To provide sort of a ground level view of what this looks like in our court and community schools and our other county operated programs. We currently have about 1,800 students enrolled, primarily secondary students in county operated court schools, both inside locked facilities and out in day programs, as well as county community schools serving primarily expelled students and students who've been out of school that we've recovered. To be to the point, it's working. Senator Hancock, to your question, I'll give you a couple of examples of how we know it's working and what I think we're learning through this process. Last week, you have some of our materials. I had the pleasure of working with a group of administrators, students, teachers, to look at some of our stakeholder input data and walk through an analysis. There was a young man there who's one of our community school students. He had been, had a full day. He had an interview that day for a student worker position in one of our school offices. He was dressed to the nines in a suit and tie and a fedora, which are becoming popular in San Diego. And he was there eager to engage in a process to look at our stakeholder input data. The other piece of what's working for that young man is he was also that day attending an orientation for concurrent enrollment in San Diego City College in the Business Information Worker Program. You can draw lines back to that young man's experience right into our LCAP and specific actions that have led to those opportunities opening up for him. Another example, we have a correctional camp, Camp Barrett, and these are primarily older students, and I worked there for a number of years early in my career as a psychologist, so I have some familiarity with the program. And one of the other access points we've provided through the LCAP is access to additional career technical education courses. And so through a partnership with our probation department, we've established a coffee cart on campus. It's very popular, as you can imagine. All law enforcement officials love coffee, right? And so it's a very, very popular program. A young man who completed training through that career technical education pathway, received his food handler certificate, graduated high school with us. We heard from him earlier this month that he is now the assistant manager of a Starbucks in the Bay Area. So again, we can draw a line from his experience in our school programs with new initiatives that were called out through LCAP to now a young man who's made that successful transition from being incarcerated to finishing school to gaining some applicable career skills to now being very gainfully employed as not just a barista, but an assistant manager. I could go on with examples like that, and it's a real shift. And I think the shift is, instead of planning our budgets as we have done for so many years, we're now budgeting plans, and those plans are driven by a very thoughtful analysis of student need. And that's, to me, that's what's different about LCAP. The needs are driving these plans, and then the resource allocations are being devoted to those specific actions to address the needs. I heard mention of restorative practice. Certainly with our population, that is an important initiative for us. And Senator Hancock, I was thinking about your question, how do we know it's working? It's not one thing, so it's not a program. So we are dedicating a significant number of resources to restorative practice, getting all of our staff trained in the model based on Ted Wachtell's work at IRP. We are also implementing PBIS throughout our schools based on University of Oregon's work. And beyond that, we're putting a huge investment in professional learning to improve instruction. And there's a nexus of those things, and it's reflected in our LCAP when we talk about the 3 priority areas. It's not just the instructional piece, it's not just the restorative piece, it's that nexus of those different activities that lead to these individual student outcomes, and also to district level outcomes. So one of the other things I wanted to mention is looking at our progress data from last year, we've seen the strongest growth in within year pre and post testing aligned to Common Core in language arts and math than we've ever seen. So it's hard to say it was because of project-based learning, or it was because of lesson study, or it was because of restorative practice. But what we're finding is it's that combination of those things and the additive effect of having those supports in place. The other thing that is working very effectively is our stakeholder involvement process. I would say that is driving a lot of this change. On February 12th, literally all of our staff were engaged in LCAP gap analysis. And so we're 2 years into this process now. By now, we still have a lot to learn, but what we're learning is how things are beginning to work. And so we're really pushing our stakeholders to be thinking about what are we learning and how are we able to draw these through lines from resource to action to outcome. And so that was the work that Young Man was engaged in. That was the work that virtually all of our staff are engaged in. Moreover, it's a conversation now throughout our program. So our local county board, we have a monthly LCAP update, either on a specific goal or on LCAP actions at a particular school. And so that's just now part of the way we do business. Dr. Cohn mentioned shifts in adult practice, and that's the other piece of this. We are doing things differently as adults. We are learning differently as adults. My colleague Richard, oh, he's going to kill me for not remembering his name. Richard from Harvard.
Oh, Elmore?
Richard Elmore, I'm sorry, Dr. Richard Elmore, jeez. Talk to him probably 3 times a week. Dr. Elmore said, you know, one of the biggest challenges he was talking in Common Core in general, in shifting instructional practice, is we're asking adults to provide instructional opportunities that they themselves may have not benefited from as learners. And so I'm a learner. Our entire leadership team are learners. Our teachers are learners. Certainly our students and parents are learners. We have learning opportunities written in LCAP for our parents. And so that shift away from, you know, the dissemination of knowledge, or we're holding this information and we're giving this out, to the co-construction of knowledge, the co-construction of learning, the development of autonomous learners. That's a huge shift, and there's an incredible amount of support that we all need through that process. So in terms of the stakeholder involvement, I think we can't go back from this point. Once we've involved our parents and our teachers in these discussions, the genie's out of the bottle. You cannot go back from this point. So I have a lot of confidence in this process going forward. 2 last points, and then I'll stop talking so you ask some questions. We really look forward to the rubrics. I mean, as my colleague from Siri said, insofar as they're going to be an important planning tool, we welcome them because they're going to give us that objective set of standards to use for our own self-evaluation. The other piece we've learned from our stakeholder processes is the information needs to be accessible. And so we do a lot of decoding of LCAP into accessible language. And so I would hope that the rubrics are as accessible. So I will certainly benefit from them, our leadership team will benefit from them, but I also want to be able to use these with parents and students and show them how, what's the standard? I mean, my first question I hear from students is, how am I going to be evaluated? How am I going to be graded? And so they need to know how the schools are going to be graded as well. So that accessibility piece is huge. I'll close with this. One piece of feedback we've gotten from parents consistently is, especially second language parents, is the translations don't make sense. And so I'll leave you with that. And so what that has forced us to do is look at how we say and write things in English. And are they written in a clear and simple way in order to make sense when our translators get a hold of these and translate them into Spanish or Vietnamese or whatever. And so I've heard that several times from translators and from parents saying, you would never say this way, or these words don't make sense the way they're put together. And so that's something we're really looking hard at, is really simplifying our language. I don't mean to diminish it. I think it's actually harder to really get at the core of what is it we're saying, we're doing, and then how do we communicate that effectively to really, advance that stakeholder input process.